This time, we're gonna do it the same as before. There's not enough light in here to actually show the words on the page. But chapter 4, it's a jungle gym, not a ladder. About a month after I joined Facebook, I got a call from Lori Goller, a highly regarded senior director of marketing at eBay. I knew Lori a bit socially, but she made it clear this was a business call and cut to the chase. I want to apply to work with you at Facebook, she said. So I thought about calling you and telling you all of the things I'm good at and all of the things I like to do. Then I figured that everyone was doing that. So instead, I want to ask you, what is your biggest problem and how can I solve it? My jaw hit the floor. I had hired thousands of people over the previous decade and no one had ever said anything remotely like that. People usually focus on finding the right role for themselves, with the implication that their skill will help the company. Lori put Facebook's needs front and center. It was a killer approach. I responded, "Recruiting is my biggest problem, and yes, you can solve it." Lori never dreamed she would work in recruiting, but she jumped in. She even agreed to drop down a level since this was a new field for her and she was willing to trade seniority for acquiring new skills. Lori did a great job running recruiting and within months was promoted to her current job leading people at Facebook. When I asked her recently if she wanted to go back to marketing someday, she responded that she believes human resources allows her to have a greater overall impact. The most common metaphor for careers is a ladder, but this concept no longer applies to most workers. As of 2010, the average American had 11 jobs from the ages of 18 to 46 alone. This means that the days of joining an organization or corporation and staying there to climb that one ladder are long gone. Lori often quotes Patty Sellers, who conceived a much better metaphor. Careers are a jungle gym, not a ladder. As Lori describes it, ladders are limiting. People can move up or down, on or off. Jungle gyms offer more creative exploration. There's only one way to get to the top on a ladder, but there are many ways to get to the top of a jungle gym. The jungle gym model benefits everyone, but especially women who might be starting careers, switching careers, getting blocked by external barriers, or re-entering the workforce after taking time off. The ability to forge a unique path with occasional dips, detours, and even dead ends presents a better chance for fulfillment. Plus, a jungle gym provides great views for many people, not just those at the top. On a ladder, most climbers are stuck staring at the butt of the person above. A jungle gym scramble is the best description of my career. Younger colleagues and students frequently ask me how I planned my path. When I tell them that I didn't, they usually react with surprise followed by relief. They seemed encouraged to know that careers do not need to be mapped out from the start. This is especially comforting in a tough market where job seekers often have to accept what is available and hope that it points in a desirable direction. We all want a job or role that truly excites and engages us. This search requires both focus and flexibility, so I recommend adopting two concurrent goals. That's a good word, concurrent. A long-term dream and an 18-month plan. I could have never connected the dots from where I started to where I am today. For one thing, Mark Zuckerberg was only 7 years old when I graduated from college. Also, back then, technology and I did not exactly have a great relationship. I used Harvard's computer system only once as an undergraduate to run regressions from my senior thesis on the economics of spousal abuse. The data was stored on a large, heavy magnetic tapes that I had to lug in big boxes across campus, cursing the entire way and arriving in a sweaty mess at the Seoul Computer Center, which was populated exclusively with male students. I then had to stay up all night spinning the tapes to input the data. When I tried to execute my final calculations, I took down the entire system. That's right. Years before Mark famously crashed the same Harvard system, I beat him to it. When I graduated from college, I had only the vaguest notion of where I was headed. The confusion was in a deep contrast to my father's clear convention of what he wanted to do from a young age of me. When my dad was 16, he felt a sharp abdominal pain during a basketball practice. My grandmother, good Jewish mother that she was, assumed it was hunger and fed him a big dinner. That made it worse. He ended up in the hospital where he was diagnosed with acute appendicitis. But because he had eaten, they couldn't operate for 12 excruciating hours. The next morning, a surgeon removed his appendix and, along with it, the pain. My father chose his career that day, deciding that he would become a physician so he could help ease other people's suffering. My mother shared my father's desire to help others. She was only 11 when she heard her rabbi give a sermon on the importance of civil rights and tikkun olam, a Hebrew phrase that means repairing the world. She responded to the call, grabbing a tin can and knocking on doors to support civil rights workers in the South. She has remained a passionate volunteer and human rights activist ever since. I grew up watching my mom work tirelessly on behalf of persecuted Jews in the Soviet Union. She and her friend Marguerite Sanford would write heartfelt appeals calling for the release of political prisoners. In the evenings, my dad would join them. Thanks to the collective efforts of concerned people all over the world, many lives were saved. Throughout my childhood, my parents emphasized the importance of pursuing a meaningful life. Elton, go, up, go, up, down, go. Sorry about the interruption. Throughout my childhood, my parents emphasized the importance of pursuing a meaningful life. Dinner discussions often centered on social injustice and those fighting to make the world a better place. As a child, I never thought about what I wanted to be, but I thought a lot about what I wanted to do. As sappy as it sounds, I hoped to change the world. My sister and brother both became doctors, and I always believed I would work at a non-profit or in government. That was my dream. And while I don't believe in mapping out each step of a career, I don't believe it helps to have a long-term dream or a goal. A long-term dream does not have to be realistic or even specific. It may reflect the desire to work in a particular field or to travel throughout the world. Maybe the dream is to have a professional autonomy or a certain amount of free time. Maybe it's to create something lasting or win a coveted prize. Some goals require more traditional paths. Anyone who aspires to become a Supreme Court justice should probably start by attending law school. But even a vague goal can provide direction, a far-off guidepost to move toward. With an eye on my childhood dream, the first job I took out of college was at the World Bank as research assistant to Larry Summers, who was serving a term as chief economist. Based in Washington, D.C., the bank's mission is to reduce global poverty. I spent my first 9 months in the stacks of the bank library in the corner of 19th and Pennsylvania. Next page, please. So, in the library at the bank, she was looking up facts and figures for Larry's papers and speeches. Larry then generously arranged for me to join an India Health field mission to get a closer look at what the bank actually did. Flying to India took me into an entirely different world. The team was working to eradicate leprosy, which was an epidemic in India's most remote and poorest region. The conditions were appalling. Due to the stigma of the disease, patients were often exiled from their villages and ended up living on dirt floors in awful places that passed for clinics. Facts and figures could never have prepared me for the reality. I have the deepest respect for people who provide hands-on help to those in crisis. It is more difficult to work in the world. Upon having returned to Washington, D.C. with a plan to attend law school, but Lant Pritchett, an economist in Larry's office, who was devoted his life to the study of poverty, persuaded me that business school would be a better alternative. I headed back to Cambridge. I tried to stay socially conscious by joining the highly unpopular nonprofit club. I also spent my second year studying social marketing, how marketing can be used to solve social problems, with Professor Gash Ranga. One of the cases we worked on concerned the shortage of organ donations, which results in 18 deaths each day in the United States alone. I never forgot this case, and 17 years later, Facebook worked with organ registries around the world to launch a tool to encourage donor registration. After business school, I took a job as a consultant at McKinsey & Company in Los Angeles. The work never entirely suited me, so I stayed for only a year and then moved back to DC to join Larry, who was now Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Department. At first, I served as his special assistant, then he was named secretary. I became his chief of staff. My job consisted of helping Larry manage the operations of the department and its $14 billion budget. He gave me the opportunity to participate in economic policy at both a national and an international level. I also ran point on some smaller projects, including the administration proposal to promote the development of vaccines for infectious disease. During my 4 years at Treasury, I witnessed the first technology boom from a distance. Its impact was obvious and appealing even beyond being able to wear jeans to work. Technology was transforming communication and changing lives not just in the United States and developed countries, but everywhere. My long-term dream instinct kicked in. When President Clinton's administration ended, I was out of a job and decided to move to Silicon Valley. In retrospect, this seems like a screwed move, but in 2001, it was questionable at best. The tech bubble had burst and the industry was still reeling after the aftershocks. I gave myself 4 months to find a job, but I hoped it would take forever. It would take fewer. It took almost a year. My Silicon Valley job search had some highs, like getting to meet my business crush eBay CEO Meg Whitman. It also has some lows, like meeting with a high-level executive who started my job interview by stating that her company would never even consider hiring someone like me because government experience could not possibly prepare anyone to work in the tech industry. It would have been so cool to have thanked her for being honest and walked out of her office, but at last, I was never cool. I sat there hemming and hawing until every last molecule of oxygen had been sucked from the room. True to her word, she never even considered hiring me. Fortunately, not everyone shared her view. Eric Schmidt and I had met several times during my Treasury years, and I went to see him just after he became CEO of then and relatively unknown Google. After several rounds of interviews with Google's founders, they offered me a job. My bank account was diminishing quickly, so it was time to get back to being a paid employee. And fast, in typical and yes annoying MBA fashion, I made a spreadsheet and listed my various opportunities in the rows and my selection criteria in the columns. I compared the roles, the level of responsibility, and so on. My heart wanted to join Google in its mission to provide the world with access to information. But in the spreadsheet game, the Google job fared the worst by far. I went back to Eric and explained my dilemma. The other companies were recruiting me for real jobs with teams to run and goals to hit. At Google, I would be their first business unit general manager. The business unit general manager. Which sounded great except for the glaring fact that Google had no business units and therefore nothing to actually manage. Not only was the role lower in level than my other option, but it was entirely unclear what the job was in the first place. Eric responded with perhaps the best piece of career advice that I have ever heard. He covered my spreadsheet with his hand and told me not to be an idiot. Also a great piece of advice. Then he explained the only one criteria mattered when picking a job: fast growth. When companies grow quickly, there are more things to do than there are people to do with them. When companies grow more slowly or stop growing, there is less to do, and too many people do not be doing. I'm sorry, this is funny. So if a company is slow, it's not doing anything, and if a company is fast at growing, it's doing something. Okay. So more people and and too many people to not be doing them. Politics and stagnation set in, and everyone falters. He told me, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, you don't want to be asked to seat, you just get on. I made up my mind that instant. Google was tiny and disorganized, but it was a rocket ship, and even more important to me, it was a rocket ship with a mission I believed in deeply. Over the years, I have repeated Eric's advice to countless people, encouraging them to reduce their career spreadsheets to one column, potential for growth. Of course, not everyone has the opportunity or the desire to work in an industry like high tech, but within any field, there are jobs that have more potential for growth than others. Those in more established industries can look for the rocket ships within their companies, divisions, or teams that are expanding, and in careers like teaching or medicine, the corollary is to seek other positions where there is high demand for those skills. For example, in my brother's field of pediatric neurosurgery, there are some cities with too many physicians, while others have too few. My brother has always elected to work where his expertise would be in demand so he can have the greatest impact. Just as I believe everyone should have a long-term dream, I also believe everyone should have an 18-month plan. I say 18-month because 2 years seems too long and 1 year seems too short, but it does not have to be any exact amount of time. Typically, my 18-month plan sets goals on two fronts. First and most important, I set targets for what my team can accomplish. Employees who can concentrate on results and impact are the most valuable. Like Lori, who was wisely focused on solving Facebook's recruiting problem before focusing on herself. This is not just thinking communally. The expected and often smart choice for a woman, but simply good business. Second, I try to set more personal goals for learning a new skill in the next 18 months. It's often painful, but I ask myself, how can I improve? If I'm afraid to do something, it is usually because I am not good at it, or perhaps I am too scared to even try. After working at Google for more than 4 years, managing well over half of the company's revenues, I was embarrassed to admit that I had never negotiated a business deal, not one. So I gathered my courage and came clean to my boss, Omid Kordenatsani, then head of sales and business development. Omid was willing to give me a chance to run a small deal team. In a small deals team, that's a typo. In the very first deal I attempted, I almost botched the whole thing by making an offer to our potential partner before fully understanding their business. Fortunately, my team included a talented negotiator, Salisha Rao, who had stepped in to teach me the obvious. Letting the other side make the first offer is often crucial to achieving favorable terms. Everyone has room to improve. Most people have a style in the workplace that often overshoots in one direction. Too aggressive or too passive, too talkative or too shy. In the first deal, I said too much. That was not a shock to anyone who knows me. Once I identified this weakness, I sought help to correct it. I turned to Maudie Taylor, a communications coach, who gave me an assignment. She told me that for 1 week I couldn't give my opinion unless asked. It was one of the longest weeks of my life. If I had bitten my tongue each time I started to express my opinion, I would have had no tongue left. Trying to overcorrect is great for finding the middle ground. In order for me to speak the right amount in a meeting, I have to feel as if I'm saying very little. People who are shy will have to feel like they are saying way too much. I know a woman who naturally talks softly and forces herself to shout in a business meeting just to speak at an average volume. Overriding our natural tendencies is very difficult. In all the years I've been trying, I can only think of a few times when someone said to me, "Cheryl, I wish you had spoken up more in that meeting. Omid did it once and I hugged him." Oh, that wasn't a quote. Omid did it once and I hugged him for telling me what I should have done correctly in that situation. Eric turned out to be absolutely right about Google, and I will always be grateful to him and to Larry Page and Sergey Brin for taking a chance on me. My 18-month plan at the company extended into 6.5 years. And I learned more than I ever could have hoped while working with true visionaries. But eventually I felt that I was at my time to make a move in the jungle gym. In my personal life, I am not someone who embraces uncertainty. I like things to be in order. I've filed documents in colored folders, and yes, I still do. And my enthusiasm for reorganizing my closets continually daffles Dave. But in my professional life, I have learned to accept uncertainty and even embrace it. A risk and a great deal of luck landed me at Google. That worked out so well that I decided to embrace risk again, which led me to Facebook. At the time, other companies were willing to hire me as CEO, but I joined Facebook as COO. At first, people questioned why I would take a lower job. At first, people questioned why I would take a lower job, man. Working for a 23-year-old. Working for a 23-year-old. No one asks me that anymore. As I did when I joined Google, I prioritized potential for fast growth and the mission of the company above title. I have seen both men and women miss out on great opportunities by focusing too much on career goals. A friend of mine had been working as a lawyer for 4 years when she realized that instead of shooting for a partner, she'd rather join a company in sales or marketing. One of her clients was willing to hire her in the new capacity, but wanted her to start at the ground level. Since she could afford the temporary pay cut, I urged her to make the jump, but she decided against taking a job that put her back 4 years. I understand how painful it was for her to lose hard-earned ground. Still, my argument was that if she was going to work for the next 30 years, what was the difference to being just back 4 years? If the other path made her happier and offered her a chance to learn new skills, that meant she was actually moving forward. In many cases, women need to be more open to taking risks in their career. When I left Google to join Facebook, as a percentage of my team, fewer women tried to follow me. As they had been all along, the men were more interested in me and say they were interested in tech and higher, better opportunities, where the risks were great but the potential rewards were even greater. Many of the women on my team eventually showed interest in joining Facebook, but not until a few years later when the company was more established. The cost of stability is often diminished for opportunities and growth. Of course, there are many times in life when being risk adverse is a great and a good thing. Adolescent and adult males drown in much greater numbers than adolescent and adult females, but in business, being risks adverse can result in stagnation. An analysis of senior corporate management appointments found that an analysis of senior corporate management appointments found that women are significantly more likely than men to continue to perform the same function even when they take on new duties. And when female managers move up, they are more likely to do so internally instead of switching to a different company. At times, staying in the same functional area and in the same organization creates inertia and limits opportunity to expand. Seeking out diverse experiences is useful preparation for leadership. I understand the internal pressures that force women to play it safe and stay put. Gender stereotypes can make it hard to move into positions traditionally held by men. Women are also more likely to accommodate a partner's career than the other way around. A job change that includes moving to another city may be a non-start for a woman in a relationship. The result is the unfortunate tautology that the tendency to leads to the staying put. So, the unfortunate tautology that the tendency to stay put leads to staying put. So if you stay put, you're going to stay put. That's what she's saying. Being risk adverse in the workplace can also cause women to be more reluctant to take on challenging tasks. In my experience, even more men look for stretch assignments and take on high visibility projects while more women hang back. Research suggests that this is particularly true for women in environments that emphasize individual performance or when women are working closely with men. One reason women avoid stretching assignments and new challenges is that they worry too much about whether they currently have the skills they need for a new role. This can become a self-fulfilling prophecy since so many abilities are acquired on the job. An internal report at Hewlett Packard revealed that women only apply for open jobs if they think they meet 100% of the criteria listed. Men apply if they think they meet 60% of the requirements. This difference has a huge ripple effect. Women need to shift from thinking, I am not ready to do that, to thinking, I want to do that, and I'll learn by doing it. My first day at work at the World Bank, Larry Summers asked me to perform some calculations. I was at a loss on how to proceed. I turned to Lat Princhant for help. Just put in the Lotus 1, 2, 3, he advised. I told him that I didn't know how to do that. Wow, he exclaimed. I can't believe you gotten this far, or even how you can understand basic economics without knowing how to use Lotus. I went home convinced that I was going to get fired. The next day, Lat sat me down. My heart was pounding, but instead of firing me, he taught me how to use the program. Now that is a great boss. Women are also more reluctant to apply for promotions, even when desired, and even when they deserve them. Often believing that good job performance will naturally lead to rewards. Carol Fallinger and Deborah Cole, founders of Negotiating Women Incorporated, describe this as the tiara syndrome, where women expect that if they keep doing their job well, someone will notice them and place a tiara on their goddamn head. That's a good one. In a perfect meteorocracy, tiaras would be doled out to the deserving. In a perfect meteorocracy, tiaras would be doled out to the deserving. But I have yet to see one floating around an office. Hard work and results should be reorganized by others, but when they aren't, advocating for oneself becomes necessary. As discussed earlier, this must be done with a great career and a great care, but it must be done. Taking risks, choosing growth, challenging ourselves, and asking for promotions with smiles on our faces, of course, are all important elements for managing our careers. One of my favorite quotes comes from author Alice Walker, who observed, "The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any." Do not wait for power to be offered, like that tiara. It might never materialize. And anyway, who wears tiara on a jungle gym? That's chapter 4. Mawaloha.